give you 4 simple steps that you can do on a daily basis to help our country get to where it needs to be. Number 1 is listen. Everybody say listen. You have to do what Les Brown said when he talked about you have to listen to the listening. So in the companies that you work with, what does that look like? Well, one of the things that you could be doing is creating new questionnaires to really help engage people who are not speaking that much because they feel like they're being marginalized in their organization. Maybe instead of just speaking to the person who's bringing you in, just speaking to the executive team, you can go out across the companies that you're working with and ask people who are not speaking up to get their perspectives on things. Because as somebody who has worked with both administrations, Trump and the Obama administration, I realized something. In the schools that I was going to do the work, when Obama won, I had some people, when I walked in, I had leaders telling me, don't talk about the election because there are teachers here who are still upset. And then when Trump won and I went into schools, I heard the same thing. Don't talk about the election because people are too upset. But see, listening to the listening, one of the things you realize when you walk around the school is I learned a couple of things. I learned that in many of our schools across the country, when Obama won, many black students stood for the Pledge of Allegiance for the first time. There's a story there. But there's also a story in that many white students stopped standing for the first time. You have to be able to see that when you're going into businesses. And I'm talking about a school, but in the corporations and the companies that you work with, every time there's a shift in leadership, you're going to deal with new challenges in your organization. So you can't go in there and regurgitate the same information because the climate might be different. So we have to do our work as speakers to listen better to the listening. And then that leads us to empower. Everybody say empower. Once we see the people who are most marginalized, we have to develop strategies to empower them. What does that look like? Well, you know, if you're dealing with a company or organization where you have a lot of type A people and everybody speaking up, maybe you can create anonymous surveys where people who are afraid to speak can start to share their opinions, to share their thoughts about how, as an older white man, I don't feel welcome here. As somebody who is homosexual, I no longer feel like I belong. As a black male in this space, I feel like I'm being targeted. Most likely, people are not going to speak up and verbalize that because they're afraid of being condemned. Because we are in an organization that we're called on to speak up, but we live in a society where people choose to speak down on people. So you can start to create the strategies and the techniques that empower them by getting different voices to speak up in different ways. Which leads us to another thing that we can do is accountability. Everybody say accountability. We have to work to hold people accountable. If we can do it in our businesses, we can do it for this country. The fact of the matter is, we see that immigration is a huge debate going on in this country right now, and you can have your opinions on where you stand on it, and that's completely fine. I am generally fine with everybody having their opinions on anything except anything dealing with the Boston Celtics, because as you can tell from my name, I was born in a very faraway place called Boston, Massachusetts, and yes, and if you're not a Celtics fan, I might question your upbringing and maybe think you weren't raised right. But other than that, we can talk about anything else. Anything else. And so we may have different views on immigration, but we can all agree that a 4th grade child shouldn't be walking into a school and hearing students chanting, "Build a wall," which is happening now. We need to hold our people accountable, our children accountable. Our children who are upstairs in the convention on their worst day, they wouldn't do something like that because we taught them how to be accountable. In your businesses, when you're hearing ignorance be spewed, you need to hold people accountable. In your churches, in your religious institutions, because the most separated and most segregated part of America to this day is our church on Sunday afternoon. We're still separated, still in our little circles. And in our circles, you get to hear things with your people that I'll never hear, and I get to hear things when I'm with my people that you'll never hear. And my people could be anybody. It could be economic, it could be racial, it could be regional, whatever it is. But when we hear those things, we have to challenge it. We have to hold people accountable. I saw Geraldo Rivera and Sean Hannity having a discussion about some policy of Trump's. And these are 2 of Trump's, if you don't know, biggest supporters. And Hannity was saying, we love Trump, we have to support this. And Geraldo said, yes, we love him, but this particular action is wrong. And we need to speak to him on that. Because the way that we celebrate our leaders is not by giving them blank slates, but by holding them accountable. And I'm not saying anything new. This is the work of Mark Sanborn. This is the work of anybody out there who talks about it. You go into your businesses and you see these bottom lines and profit suffering, and you say, well, we need to do this. And they say, well, no, everything's just working fine. Well, look at your bottom line. It's not. That's accountability. And if we can do it there, we can do it in all of our other spaces. And that leads us to the last one. Everybody say diversity. Look, when people think about diversity, they primarily think about gender and race. And yes, those are important issues, but I have never read a story, Lenora, that says that companies that are less diverse are the most successful. Every study that's out there talks about the companies that embrace diversity are more successful. And so when we talk about diversity, it is gender, it is race, but it's also age, it's also religion, it's also people who are dealing with different physical challenges. It's also sexual preference, region of the country, region of the world. Many of the companies you see getting in trouble right now on social media is because they don't have a diverse group of people on their staff, and now they're getting exposed to the rest of the world. So that's something you can look at when you're working with your businesses. What's there as it relates to diversity, but you also need to watch the company that you keep as it relates to diversity. I read a study in the Washington Post that said that over 70% of white Americans have no black friends today. So most likely what we're going to get from a particular group is going to be made up by what we see on television. Because as Donna Ford said, the less we know about each other, the more we make up. And that is leading to many of the challenges that we are having today. And listen, family, I'll be very honest with you. I tried to be that person who goes into companies, just speaks, works on giving an awesome performance, get the check and go home, deposit it and smile. I try to be that person to just say, oh, I'm working with all these multiple associations and not speak on anything. But I gotta tell you, when I see a police officer who's not going to come home because he died, she died trying to service a warrant, when I see a soldier that dies because of a war that we didn't need to be involved in the first place, when I see an unarmed child being slain unnecessarily, it could be by an officer or by someone in their neighborhood, when I see people being taunted just because of what they wear, I can't be silent because I've learned that silence is compliance. And so we have to realize we spend so much time condemning people like Hitler, but one of the things we don't understand is that everything that Hitler did was legal because of the laws that were created through complacency from others. So I talked about listening, I talked about empowering, I talked about holding people accountable, and I talked about diversity. That spells out lead. Everybody say lead. We need to lead the charge because many people don't know how to make this happen. If you watch what I do on social media, I engage in debates. I'm critical of every president. I don't care who comes in. But when I'm talking to people, I don't demean them. I don't name call. I don't shut them down because that's not productive. But that's what we're doing today. You know, social media used to be the place that people went to reconnect, but now it's the place where we go to disconnect. And we need to teach people how to do better. We are losing our way in this country, but as speakers, we can show people the way. And people talk a lot about whether America is great, and of course this is a great country. And I believe that we can do more in what we do to keep it great and to make it become even greater. So as you leave here today and you go back into your businesses and you go back into your communities, I want you to ask yourself, how can you be a better leader, L-E-A-D? When you're in your churches, when you're in your synagogues, in your mosques, when you're hearing ignorance be spewed, how can you better challenge that? How can you, in your own spots, help us stay great? Stay great. It's not about becoming great because we are already great. So as I close with this poem, I want you to remember that this organization was founded on the principle of not arguing over small pieces of a pie, but coming together and making a bigger pie. I believe that we need to do the work to make a bigger, and better, greater American pie. And I dedicate this poem to you and to that cause. They say that greatness is a choice, but what have you chosen? You've been frozen in time and broken in mind. For too long, the same song playing in your head, living in breath, but better off dead. But who said that you didn't have the power? Who said this is not your hour? You've been showered with a steady stream of words that kill your dreams. But since you're still breathing, then someone has lied to you, tried to deny you of your own potential inside you. If you just decide to, let no one deride you. Don't even let them get beside you as you unearth the new you. Stop listening to naysayers and decide to do you. No more pity parties, sob stories, and boo-hoos. If no one told you that you're great, then let me be the first to. If you develop the thirst to drink from Faith's fountain, you'll develop the might to move mountains. You see, we remove tons of dirt to find 1 ounce of gold. So I ask you to remove tons of hurt and just uncover 1 ounce of your soul. You'll set yourself on a true path of excellence, getting out of your passenger seat and driving your own car, reaching for the moon, but maybe only landing among the stars. You see, you have greatness inside you, but you must choose to be great. Blaze a path of excellence, leaving fear in your wake. All you need is already inside you. You just must believe in yourself, grow towards your greatness, and discover your true wealth. Thank you. Thank you.